rest of you, but I'd like to get things rolling so we can get out of here as soon as we can. We'll start with a call of the roll.
Mr. Bacon? Mr. Griffith?
Here.
Mr. Mahalson?
Here.
Ms. Clevenger?
Here.
Mr. Zollinger?
Here. Okay, a quorum is present, 4 out of 5 members. Just so you know, for whatever action we take tonight, 3 of us will have to vote in favor of whatever motion is made. That even though there's, and that's a majority of the board of 5. What we're going to do is we're going to approve a couple meeting minutes. That'll be pretty quick, and then we'll get to the business portion of the meeting. As you can see, we have a court reporter taking down everything we're saying, and it's important if you're going to get up and speak that you give any answers to any questions audibly. Avoid shaking the head, I don't know, things like that. It makes the court reporter's job easier to put out a transcript. Also, if you think, even if you think you're going to be coming up and speaking tonight, you're going to need to be put under oath. And that's just, and how we're going to do that, we'll do that right now, is just please stand up and raise your right hand, and the court reporter will put you under oath.
You would each of you swear that the testimony you're about to give in any cause tonight will be the truth.
Okay, thank you. And you know, we have a court reporter just so we have an accurate record of everything that's said and all the evidence that's been submitted. So we'll move to the next portion of the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of the October 23rd, 2018 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those, or go ahead and do a roll call.
Mr. Griffith?
Abstain.
Mr. Mahalson?
Yes.
Ms. Clevenger?
Yes.
Mr. Zollinger?
Yes. Okay, those are approved. So we'll move to the approval of the November 27th, 2018 meeting. Go ahead and call the roll. Or I'm sorry, do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from November 27th meeting.
Do you have a second?
I think we switched the ones. I think you missed the first one and I missed the second one.
Correct.
Can I rescind my abstention on the first vote and make it a positive?
Okay.
And are you gonna?
And make it a yay. I'm sorry. Yes.
And you're gonna abstain on the October 23rd, Mr. Mahalson?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion is still approved with three approving. Okay, so then now we're at the November 27th, 2018 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I so move.
Okay, and I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Griffith?
Abstain.
Mr. Mahalson?
Yes.
Ms. Clevenger?
Yes.
Mr. Zollinger?
Yes. Okay, those are approved as well. The next thing on our agenda is approval of the 2019 minute dates, and there's a sheet showing what dates those are. I don't think we need to approve those unless members of the board or someone else in administration thinks we have to. These dates that are on this sheet will be posted on the website. The only change I would suggest is December 24th. There's no way we're going to have a meeting on December 24th, 2019. So I would suggest just moving that to making that December 17th. These dates are all subject to change. If they are changed, proper notice will be given out. They are also maybe canceled if there's no agenda. And again, the public will be properly notified of any changes to these dates. If everyone's okay, I don't think we need to vote on that. If that's all right, we'll just have those posted to the website for now. The next item, then, we'll go to the business portion of the agenda now. Go ahead and call out the first item.
Application number ZBOA 2018-25, Mike Simmons, IGS Energy. Mr. Simmons has requested a variance to obtain a solicitor's permit valid for 1 year or more instead of the maximum of 10 days allowed pursuant to the City of North Canton Codified Ordinance 723.03D.
Okay, we'll start by anyone who wants to get up and speak in favor of granting this I will say this is this is not a typical really a variance request. We as a board have jurisdiction to hear appeals of certain city officers, and that includes the superintendent of permits. So what has happened here is the superintendent of permits has made a decision not to allow this type of permit for solicitation, and the appealing party has appealed to us, and we as a board have jurisdiction to hear this issue. It is not, and it's not something that's found in the zoning and building code. It's actually found in another part of the city ordinances. So with that, anyone who wants to get up and speak in favor of this application may do so now.
Let me hand each one of you guys real quick, just a little brief.
You can go ahead. This
I'm
one.
not going to read the whole thing, believe me.
Okay.
But kind of like what we're proposing here, and a little bit of background.
Thank you.
And then this is Andrew Kaufman.
You'll need to say your name as well.
My name is Michael Simmons.
Please give us your addresses too, please.
My address is 2019 Baker Lane in Stowe, Ohio.
Mine is 1999 Greensburg Road, North Canton.
Okay.
Okay. So Mike Simmons, he's an associate of mine that works in our Akron office. We cover the Akron-Canton area for our business of IGS. For those of you who do not know what IGS is, we are an energy supplier, and we sell gas, electric, and home warranty services. The reason we filed for the variance to the ordinance for the 10-day permit has a lot to do with the type of customers and the relationships that we want to build with those customers that we are doing in a lot of other areas around the Akron-Canton area and even around the Cleveland area. So what I put in front of you, or what Mike handed out to you, is kind of a run-through of some typical reasons of services that we would provide a customer. And a little bit of background of who IGS is. So we are family owned and operated. We're in Ohio. We've been here for 30 years. And we do pride ourselves on exceptional customer experiences. And with the 10-day permit limit that we currently have available in North Canton, we wanted to try to extend that to elaborate on that exceptional customer experience that we try to achieve with our customers and the rapport that we try to build with our customers.
You want to request a year instead of 10 days?
Yeah, so if you flip to page 2 of the document that Mike handed out to you, I gave some examples of some other permit structures that we currently have and are operating under. So the first one being Canton, we do have a 6-month permit there that requires no cost, which allows multiple reps to work under that. Massillon is an example of $100 for multiple reps. There's one of Akron of $30, and a lot of these you see have extended time frames that extend beyond the 10-day mark. This type of time frame from 3 months to 1 year does allow us to have that follow through with the customers that we're interacting with, whereas 10 days, that really restricts us, especially with the $75 cost on that. So if you go to the last page of the document, what we had submitted was something to reflect the typical structure of a permit that we would have in another area, and what we propose is a year for a cost of $300. And that's something that, should this be maybe approved, we would be willing to work with the cost, but the biggest thing to us is just being able to establish a longer-term relationship, not only with our customers, but the community.
Yeah, your proposal, the $300, I mean, the cost that the city charges for a 10-day is $75 for 5 solicitors, so you're asking,
Understood.
I mean, if I add that up for a year, you're asking for a pretty significant reduction in your fee.
Yes.
From what the city charges. You're also suggesting that you give us a background check. When I look at the statute that gives us the, when you apply for this, it's a 10-day, just for the 10 days, the city requires a lot more than what it appears you're willing to provide for the 1 year. The city asks for a permanent and local address of the applicant. We want any person, firm or corporation with whom the applicant has solicited during the last 3 years. Your proposal doesn't seem to have that. The names of all other municipalities in which the applicant has conducted soliciting activities during the last 6 months. Your proposal doesn't have that listed. Whether the applicant has ever been denied a license or permit or solicit or to such a license revoked, including time and place of such denial or revocation. Yours might, the background check might provide that, but that's not certain. The proposed
Oh, absolutely.
dates and dates and times of solicitation and routes to be followed in conducting the same. I don't see that. I don't know how the city would monitor that over a 1-year period even. The make, model, year, color, license plate number of automobiles used by the applicant during the period of solicitation within the municipality. How do you propose to resolve that with a 1-year permit?
So a lot of the stuff that you had just mentioned with, what areas they've been sold in, if they've ever been denied a permit, we do keep records of that as a company when we do our own background checks and any background checks that would be done by the city. And it's something that, these were just a couple of items that typically go with a permit maybe outside of North Canton that we would need to provide most municipalities. But any additional on top of this list, we would absolutely be willing to provide if necessary.
I don't know how everyone else feels, but I mean, this is sort of interesting. I mean, I'm not sure what the standard of review is, and maybe Mr. Fox will let us, if he knows, he'll tell us, but what you've cited from other cities, those things have been put in by the city councils of those other cities.
Absolutely.
This ordinance, you're asking us basically to rewrite an ordinance. Am I wrong there?
I'm not sure what the process of that would be. I don't know if there's exceptions to ordinances that are able to be made within those, but essentially yes.
Yeah,
we're just asking for an exception.
My view is you've come to the wrong forum for this.
Okay.
We're an appointed board that are of volunteers, basically. We don't get paid for this. I think what you want is a new ordinance or a revised ordinance that's written by, that's put in, something that elected officials put in place. That's probably the right route to take. I mean, I don't feel, even like people that just come in and grant normal variances for their property, I always give this speech to them that the burden is high and, you're asking us to rewrite something an elected official has already put in place. You're asking us to do something that not only to extend the time dramatically from 10 days to a year, but to pay far less than what the total fee would be for a year. And then also, your proposal doesn't list out the things that the ordinance requires. And I mean, I'm personally very uncomfortable doing that in my position. We have the right to hear your appeal. We have jurisdiction to do that. But I don't feel comfortable taking an entire ordinance that the city council has put in place and rewriting it. I mean, it's there for a reason. They have these ordinances are there for a reason, and I don't even think we need to get into why it's there. I just don't feel comfortable rewriting the ordinance. Does anybody else have any questions?
Well, I think, and I apologize to you guys, because I think you make some great points about, obviously, it being logistically a big issue. But it seems to me like our role here is to appeal if you guys felt like what was granted under the statute wasn't done properly. So, for example, the city council made a rule that said 10 days. If you guys felt like you were denied that because some of the restrictions in there were not followed, and you said, no, we provided that information, this would be the forum for you to say, no, the information that we provided was accurate, as opposed to kind of extending what council. Does that make sense? I guess that's kind of what you were saying too.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I see our role in this, when it comes to a decision of a city officer, the decision wasn't right because they didn't follow the ordinance correctly, or our situation is so special that the ordinance doesn't really, apply to our situation, or we need you to come in and fix something. This seems a little bit more than that.
It would be a little equivalent, let me give a quick example. It would be a little equivalent to somebody coming to us and saying, hey, I'm a really good driver, so the speed limits that you've put in place shouldn't apply to me because I'm really good at driving, right? And maybe that's actually a realistic request, but we don't have the power to change the speed limits in the city. That's city council's responsibility. I think that's kind of a good equivalent to what we're saying. I don't mean to demean it in any way. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, we agree to all the current terms that's within the city of North Canton. The ones that I put on here are just additional ones. So for instance, we would actually supply the city with an insurance policy on one of our gentlemen or women of like $1 million of liability. No other canvasser is doing this out there. You're not going to get $75 every 10 days from very many people, but you will get $300 from us. But we have an excellent reputation within the community. We're trying to build a community of people. IGS is phenomenally huge. They built the largest solar panel project in the state of Ohio, rated #1 best project ever done in Cleveland. That is moving all over the country. So soon we'll be coming out with solar opportunities for consumers in this area. We're just looking for a way to build a community of people, everybody sticking together, and maybe our guys could help in some way.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else have any questions?
For the members, the applicant, and those in the audience that are here for this issue, just so you understand maybe the background, the time frame for this. This original ordinance was enacted in February of 1986 and is substantially the same. It was amended in July of '08, and the rationale for that amendment in '08 was simply to change the cost of the permit to bring it in line with other communities. So as it stands substantively, it appears that we've had this ordinance in place since 1986.
Anybody else have any questions?
So is this a one-time variance request for 1 year or in perpetuity, or is it just for a year?
No, it would be consecutive years. So just allowing us to renew on a 1-year basis instead of a 10-year basis to, again, allow us that longevity to build the community that Mike was speaking of.
So you would be the sole utility provider that would have this accommodation in North Canton?
Well, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
You're the only energy company that would have this right?
Correct. I mean, if that would be an exception willing to
Versus
be
any
made,
other energy
then yes.
Other carrier energy management company?
Yeah, I mean, there are other suppliers out there.
Sure.
There are tons of energy suppliers, a lot of competition out there, but like Mike said, with this being a $75 situation every 10 days, there are probably not many out here, and if they are, they're probably not here legally. And we run into that a lot, and we want to go through this the right way to be able to do our services legally and solicit legally and try to gain customers legally instead of downgrading our services and our expectations of our employees to just let them go out and risk it. So, like Mike said, I mean, we've done the permit multiple times in this community. We have a lot of customers in this community. I mean, in the Stark County area alone, we have an aggregate supply for natural gas, and we provide tens and thousands of customers with our services, and they're very happy. I mean, if you go to the third page, this is just a review sheet. But what I pulled is 24 hours. Within 24 hours, you can see how many reviews customers have gone on and made of our companies and of our experiences that they're having with our reps and how great they are. I mean, if this is a Trustpilot website and we're 5 stars and we're considered excellent on there with our customer services, and we want to be able to do that on a long-term basis in the city of North Canton because we're doing things the right way.
There was a question about the standard of review, and for your decision, should it be appealed, it would be viewed under an abuse of discretion.
Okay.
Basically stating that you had no basis whatsoever for the decision that you're making. It's capricious, arbitrary, or unconstitutional.
Okay. I personally, I hear what you're saying. I understand what you want to do here and why you want to do it, but whether that makes good public policy sense is really, I do not feel that is a decision for this board to make. You are basically, what you're basically asking us to do is write a new ordinance or rewrite an ordinance, almost not in its entirety, but you're asking us to do a substantial amount of ordinance writing. And that's really not our job on this board. We're here to fix decisions that may not have been decided correctly or to help city residents whose property is uniquely affected by the zoning and building code.
And
I think where your energy needs to be directed toward are the members of city council and the city administration, and where you can make this pitch to them, and they can, you can talk about how the ordinance needs to be rewritten for companies like yours. I personally don't feel comfortable, and in fact, I feel like if we were to grant this, we might be subjecting ourselves, and this is just my opinion, to a review by a court for abusing discretion because we're stepping outside our role as a board of zoning appeals. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
No, I think getting a one-year permit extension for folks who are doing the work that you do makes a lot of sense, but I agree with Clint here. I think the problem is we're going to be hamstrung by what the law allows us to do, and in this case, I would agree with him that we don't have the authority to grant you that for the reasons that I commented on before.
I have to agree with that.
Okay. So I guess my only other ask would be that we be provided some kind of information to maybe take this to city council on how we could go about doing that. I mean, this is kind of the path that we were directed on. So if we could be directed in the correct path to be able to have city council hear this, that would be really appreciated.
Yeah, you can either stick around until the end of the meeting or follow up with the administration at, email or call and let them know who would they talk to. Talk to Mr. Fox, the law director.
Okay.
And he'll point you in the right direction on that.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Are you guys have anything else?
No. That's
okay.
it.
All right. Anybody else want to speak for or against? Yes.
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. I do thoroughly agree with what you're saying up here. It's a codified ordinance. They're asking you to ignore lawfully enacted laws that have been in place, as Mr. Fox said, for a good number of years. Here's an aspect you haven't maybe talked about, and maybe you don't even need to. It's ordinances like this, laws that we have in our city, I think, that make people feel secure in their home. As we all come and go from our homes or look out the window to see what's going on if you hear something, it limits the number of people that are traipsing up into people's property. We all know the mailman, UPS deliveries, FedEx, all that, and they're clearly identified and certainly vetted by their companies. But it minimizes the number of people who, I guess legally, can just traipse up and down the street going home after home after home. And a person could certainly make a pretty good assessment of what goes on in neighborhoods and their home and people's homes. And I applaud that we minimize the number of people who are selling a product or coming up knocking on your door. Now, I don't know if the high school kids have to get a license. I don't know. I don't know quite how that works. They do, Mr. Fox?
We provide certain
the bands come around and
yes, schools.
ask for donations and give you a little sticker, or
nonprofits,
girls selling cookies. But again, I applaud the fact that we just don't have a blanket policy. Just anybody can wander up and down your street, knocking on your doors. And I'm sure any of you agree. When you go up to somebody's house, knock on the door, you can kind of look around. And in this day and age, certainly, you want to minimize the people who are reconnoitering or reconning your neighborhood. And maybe that wouldn't even happen with these gentlemen here. I don't mean to cast any kind of disparities, but I like the fact that we're controlling and minimizing the traffic that can be coming up to your homes on a regular basis. Myself and neighbors, we all know who should be in the neighborhood. And I like the fact that we're just not allowing any Tom, Dick, and Harry to come up and sell you something. You know, and I think we are complying with federal law, state law. We're not outlawing it. We want you to be permitted by the city. And so if somebody has a concern, they see somebody going up to houses on your street, they can pick up the phone, call the police, and say, yep, we know who they are. They've been vetted and everything's okay. But again, we minimize that. We don't want to have people up and down our neighborhoods on a daily basis. In this day and age, with all the ways of communicating with people, there are other ways. So thank you for your position on that and upholding the law, which is truly elected officials make that decision, not yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Any other discussion among the board? If not, we'll go ahead and call a roll for a vote. Well, I need a motion.
Motion for the recommendation to take this to City Council versus hearing in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals. What is the motion?
I think the motion would either be to approve the application and grant this request, or to deny the request.
I would agree.
Yeah, and then in terms of going to City Council, that's a conversation that can happen after. Yeah.
Motion to deny the request.
Do I have a second?
I would second.
Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Maholson,
Yes.
Ms. Clevenger,
Yes.
Mr. Zollinger,
Yes. Okay, so the application is denied, and yeah, I'd suggest a conversation with Mr. Fox afterwards about what other avenues. Go ahead and call the next item, please.
application number ZBOA 2018-27, Catherine Ward and Tanya Moody, homeowners of 602 East Maple Street. They are requesting a setback variance to install a privacy fence on a corner lot pursuant to sections 1133.05 D1B, 1133.08 E1A, and 1179.01.
Thank you. Anyone who'd like to get up and speak in favor of the application can approach, and go ahead and give your names and addresses for the record.
Tanya Moody, 602 East Maple Street, North Canton.
Catherine Ward, 602 East Maple Street, North Canton.
Go ahead. But just so you know, like I think I could speak for all of us. We've all read through the application materials. I know I have driven by your property. I drive by it all the time, but I drove by it today and through your neighborhood. Others might have also, so go ahead.
Okay. So we're asking to get a variance to install a privacy fence that would be 60 foot from the stop sign, so there would be no vision impairment for traffic. It would be 11 foot off the curb. There would be no disturbance for utilities. Everything would be accessible without having to come inside the fence.
You want a 6-foot fence going along Pershing, where your picket fence is now?
Yeah, we have photos.
11 feet from the curb?
Yes.
We currently have a white picket fence there.
Right.
We want to replace that with a privacy fence and extend it to where this fence is.
Okay, yeah, by your driveway there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would stop before the driveway even.
Okay. So you're replacing, because I was confused. I thought the fence was already installed. So you're going to be replacing the picket fence?
Yes, we're going to move the white picket fence to the front of the yard and then put the white privacy fence on what we call the side yard.
And a portion of your yard already has that white privacy fence?
Yeah, the way the house was zoned, because it's a corner lot,
Right.
it was, our whole back, almost the entire backyard is zoned front yard.
Here's the front of the house where we're going to put the white picket fence. It would just be more aesthetic.
On the Maple Street side?
Correct.
Yeah. And just so, yeah, and you're being a corner lot, and I know sometimes it seems like it's defying common sense, but under the code, and there's a reason this is the way it is, but So, the side yard for you is the Pershing side. The front yard is the Maple side, correct? Is that right? And so the side yard, Mr. Gundy, this is, what is first of all, what's the setback for that side yard for this type of house, or this zoning?
Yes, there's a couple of clarifications in regards to this matters. First, the yard is defined in 112502, parent 121 yard, and it does refer to this lot line, or for the side yard, the side lot line in this regard. Further, this appears to be a single-family dwelling located in residential multifamily zone. The setback's still the same. We're still looking at a 40-foot setback, so that would be from the principal building to that side lot line for the side. And again, with it being on the corner, that 40-foot applies to the front yard as well as the side yard. So, and those come from Schedule 1135.05, parent E, and that refers to the 40-foot setback.
So the fence could only, they have to go 40 feet back, or?
Well, so if we look at 1135.07, parent B, parent 1A, that limits the height of the fence in the required yards to 3 foot.
Right.
So if they want to exceed the 3 foot, the fence would have to be outside of that setback.
Okay.
We have a picture of the neighbor directly across from our driveway that has a privacy fence.
Yeah, no, I wanted to ask, I saw that.
Yeah.
That is, do you know when, this is on the other side of Pershing from you, right?
Correct.
Right.
Because I looked through, I didn't see a perimeter fence that was 6 feet tall anywhere else in your neighborhood that, that was on a corner lot that was like this. You know what I mean? I've seen other
This one it's right down the road on Bechtel and Pershing.
Bechtel and Pershing, okay.
Yeah,
Do you have any idea when these fences were put in?
I don't.
Because the code may have been different when they were installed. That's the only that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I doubt that. We've lived there for 3 years now.
Because what happens if the code says it was permitted when they put them in, if they're not complying now, the city doesn't make them take it down. It's just if they tried to reinstall the fence, they would say, well, now you got to do 3 feet. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But if you had evidence that these were installed after the ordinance, the current ordinance was put in place, that would be relevant to me. Mr. Gundy, are you aware of these fences?
I'm not.
This one's kind of hard to see, but let's see, but this is on the Maple side as well. But they have it.
Yeah, no, that one, and that one seems farther back. I don't know. It might be 3 feet.
It's 3 foot, but yeah, it's privacy fence.
Yeah. And 3 feet would be okay. Like what you have there now, if it's 3 feet, is okay, right? So it's the 6 foot thing that I'm trying to having an issue with.
Well, we also have a German short-haired pointer that gets out of that vinyl fence all the time, and if you have a dog yourself, just have to worry about that. And I know we could put them on a chain or whatever, but we want to have the same rights as another homeowner that can play with the dog in the yard.
Yeah.
It would only increase our property value as well for resale. Have the privacy, that's a very busy road, Pershing and East Maple. I don't know, I mean, you said you're familiar with it. You try to sit outside in the summer and just cars up and down, and there's just no privacy.
It's a cut through from Main Street because Main Street has all the lights, so people come
Yeah.
from Pershing to.
I'm one of the people you see driving there all the time. Trust me, I know. You other board members want to see those or not? Or yeah, I would. I mean, I don't. This fence looks old, but I just don't know when they were installed. And the one fence on the other side of the street from you. I don't know if that's in compliance with the setback, because it's farther back from the curb. It's not a perimeter fence, more or less. It is a privacy fence, and it's definitely taller.
I think it's only 14 foot from the curb.
14, okay.
It's just because it's up on that little hill that it looks further back than it is.
And if you've been by the house, where we would stop the fence is before, I don't know, yeah, it's 5 feet before the driveway or so. So it wouldn't impede any vision of the road.
Yeah.
It would really just be able to have more flow with our yard.
You know why? Do you understand why that front, what looks like your front yard is actually called the side yard? It's because the houses on Pershing that go down the street from you, they want your side yard, your front yard, to look like the front yards of everybody on that street. They want it to be uniform looking. They don't want, that's why a corner lot is treated like that. They don't, you know, so when I look down Pershing, there's the house across the street from you, and this one at Bechtel, but most of the other ones, you don't see these fences up front like that, because the city doesn't allow them to do it either. I don't know what the circumstances are of these other two properties, but they have the same rules in place, and that's why you don't see these 6-foot high fences, you know, close to the curb anywhere else on your street. So that's why it's written that way. Does anyone have any questions?
Did you install or have installed the fence that's there now?
No,
It was previous to your ownership.
correct.
Do we know if that fence was currently in compliance? The picket fence that's there now?
Looks like it was when was that fence? Do you have any idea when that was
The
installed?
house was built in 2014, so I assume that was.
So, I mean, yeah, that was after this ordinance. Anyone else?
So there's two variances being requested here for the front yard facing Maple, because that is the front of the house, as well as the height variance for the side yard, which is Pershing.
Correct.
Okay.
We are dealing with the front yard facing Maple, because there's not enough setback
Is that
for
true,
that picket fence?
Mr. Gundy? I think they have a setback issue with, they want to go 4 feet off the sidewalk off of Maple.
Okay.
And I believe they need a variance for that too, right?
Yeah, it looks like it's 18 feet instead of 20, right?
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah, 20-foot setback.
I think
Comfortable with that piece.
the overlying issue is that the 3 feet versus the 6 feet,
Right.
and whether that's the minimum necessary. And you know, as it relates to what's before the board, there are the 10 factors that the board must consider. It's not necessarily one specifically. They look at them as the totality of the circumstances. And you know, the first one is what special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land and structure involved, which are not applicable generally to other lands and structures in the same zoning district. And that would include in comparison to other lots that have the front and the side lot. And what characteristics are different in your property than those others that would cause the board to consider doubling the size of the height of the fence?
The lot is
Just
very
one of
narrow.
One of
so
the 10.
The lot is very narrow, so there would be no other zoned appropriate yard to install a 6-foot privacy fence to be able to let the dogs out and have your outdoor living space.
The lots like the lot at Wise and Maple, those lots are about the same size as yours. I didn't see any perimeter fences on those that were in the side or front yards. I see them, going between the backyards of those lots. But there are, like, those are narrow city lots like yours. And same on the other side of Maple. They're all about the same size. A lot of these corner lots are all about 0.25. Is yours 0.25 acres, or is it less than that?
It's 50 by 100, I believe.
There are other lots, corner lots the same size as yours. So it's not singularly unique in that regard.
But the way the house was built is, that is the side of the house, whereas other houses, maybe it's in front of the house and they can utilize their side and rear yard.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, we can't.
Yeah, like the picture of the house on Brumbaugh, or is it
Bechtel.
Bechtel? The front of their house is on
Pershing side.
Pershing side. But they're on the corner there, so they can have their whole backyard fenced in.
Yeah.
Right. So if our house was built with the front facing Maple, maybe we could fence it in differently, but the way the house was built on the lot, it leaves you very limited in the use of your yard.
Yeah, well, these houses were built before perimeter fences kind of became a thing, I think. So
Well, this
front
one was
yard,
built in 2014, so.
front, what was that? This house was built in 14?
2014. So.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right, yeah, okay. But it was built on I guess, yeah, why did they?
I don't know. So many things we said, why did they do this?
Well, I'm surprised that, I don't know if this can be answered right now, but the way the house is situated, it seems like it wouldn't be in compliance anyway because of the way it is on the lot. Like somebody had to, I wonder, did we ever grant a variance for the house? Or?
You can tell that they were going to put a driveway
Yeah, they have it cut out on the side
on
of
Pershing. It's cut out,
Yeah.
but
Your house, the back of your house is right up against the lot line in the back. I don't know if there was there some kind of variance or?
I was on this board in 2014, and this never came in front of the board, that I recall.
Agreed. And sometimes it's not a surprise that something's built and it's not built to code and they've not obtained a variance or conditional use.
I'm sure they applied for a permit, it was probably granted based on incorrect information or false information.
Perhaps.
Setbacks.
Perhaps. One of the criteria that the board is to look at is whether or not this is the minimum necessary. This is doubling the size of the permitted fence.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too. I don't know if your dog can jump over a 4-foot fence or a 5-foot. I mean, I personally, like 6-foot fence, that's a pretty, I've had those in my yard, but not on the front. And I don't know, but I think, is your fence contractor, does he give you an option of a 4 or 5-foot fence, or?
We didn't even look at those because right now we have the 6-foot in the back corner of the lot, so
Right.
we just thought to continue that along.
Yeah.
Part of the difficulty for this board is for the reasons that you brought the photographs in was to show that there's some others that have similar circumstances and have a higher fence. What
somewhat can shackle this board is if it disregards this ordinance and permits to double the size of the fence, that in some way opens the floodgates, if you will, for others to come with those photographs in addition to yours and ask for the same thing. In essence, it's what you heard before. If we provide it for these individuals, you're going to have difficulty in justifying not providing it to someone in similar circumstances.
Do we know what,
Just so you know some of the burden that they have here in
Right.
trying to justify that.
do they have like reason why like we can't have like why they don't want 6-foot fence?
They don't want, you know, they don't, the city has decided with lots like yours, in a neighborhood like yours, they don't want people with big, tall fences in their front yard. I don't know if you've ever been in like I've been in other neighborhoods like in Florida, it's a big thing where zoning's a lot more lax. You see those big concrete walls in the front of houses, and you can't see the front yards, and it's nice for security and privacy, but it's maybe not, to some people's view, not warm and inviting. And so the city has decided that they don't want that in front yards. They want front yards to be more exposed. That's just what they're saying.
Right.
And so, like, and what Mr. Fox is saying is, if we grant this, well, what's to stop everybody on your street from doing the same thing? And next thing you know, you got 6-foot tall fences in everybody's front yard, and we're powerless to stop it at that point. It's a
Right.
slippery slope, is what he's saying.
Well, we're the only house on the street that this is really our side yard.
Because if you look at the photos, that's where our garage is, that's the side of our house. The front of our house is on East
So
Maple.
we want to draw the attention back around to the front by putting a white picket fence.
Our
on the
address is
front.
East Maple.
Yeah, but your side yard is the front, so the front yards of everybody, like I told you before, the front yard of everybody on Pershing going down away from Maple from you has the same rule. They can't put a fence up like you're proposing. They want your side yard to
Right.
be like their front yard.
I understand that, but that's
Yeah.
their front yard.
Yeah.
And East Maple is our front yard.
Yeah, like I said, that's what the code, that's what it says, and that's why it says that. I'm not trying to argue, I'm just
No,
trying to explain.
right, I'm not either,
why
it just
like the way
doesn't
it
make a
is.
lot of sense. Like, if our front yard, if we're considered East Maple and our front door is in our front yard, or our
Yeah.
front,
This is
and
Maple.
Believe me, we've had this conversation many times, people don't understand. I understand what the confusion with that.
But then would it prevent us, if we can't get a 6-foot fence, from putting up a 3-foot fence and putting up 6-foot shrubbery, privacy shrubbery down it?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't
So-
know if there might be a shrubbery rule. I mean, that sounds funny, but there's a rule about vegetation, but I don't know if there is one I don't know if there would be one in your situation. I haven't looked at.
well, we need to find out, because that's our next step.
I mean, if you want to look into that, you can, because if we vote, and I don't know how we're going to vote. I honestly don't know how we're going to vote right now. But if we turn this down, you'd have to wait 6 months and then come back and resubmit. You could dismiss now and then look into that issue or some other way of doing this where you might not even have to come back here. So it's up to you, but and you can wait to make that decision after you hear from, hear more questions or we hear from other people. So I don't know if anybody has any other questions.
Would I be correct in stating that your primary reason is the fence that is on the side of Pershing Avenue, and that the fence that you would be putting on Maple Street is relocation of your existing material from the back? So your primary concern is the 6-foot fence?
Correct.
facing Pershing.
Correct.
So you don't want to lose the material that's already there?
Correct. We would forego the front.
The Maple Street side?
Yes,
The front side,
to have the privacy fence,
Yeah.
to have everybody
Use of the
driving
yard.
and stopping at the stop sign all the way back, and you're trying to sit outside and enjoy a
and not have to worry about.
glass of lemonade while people are looking at you.
Okay.
Lemonade?
I actually wouldn't object to the setback in the front. I mean, the picket fence. think it is a unique scenario because it's 18 feet versus 20, so it's not a huge objection. And you do have a unique scenario. You disagree?
No, I agree, but again, that's not the primary reason we're needing.
Right, that was just to make it more aesthetically, more curb appeal for the property.
Right.
There's one down the road as well going towards Walsh University. There's a house that has a white picket fence out in front.
And just to point out, I had noticed this recently. Often we know this because we hear here at the meeting that if this board denies a variance, that there's this 6-month time period to come back. But a closer review of it says the board need not.
Yeah,
So
we kind of have some
you have
discretion.
that, some discretion, indeed. with
Yeah.
that, so.
Anything else?
Is it appropriate to ask if you've talked to your other neighbors?
No, we have not. We don't really, I mean, hi, I don't know their names. We don't, the lady across the street, her husband passed away. We used to talk to him a lot,
But
help him out.
I wondered if you talked to them about having a fence.
No.
Extending that 6-foot privacy.
Everybody around you's been notified of this, and I don't know if anyone, we'll see if anybody else showed up to talk about it.
Sure.
I'll give these back to you, I don't want, and anybody else have anything?
Just one last thing, one of the justifications for granting of a variance is that the requested variance is the minimum that will allow reasonable use of the property or building. For the ordinance that states 3 feet for the height of the fence along Pershing, I would consider 4 feet as a minimum, and enable reasonable use of the property. It contains your dog, but it doesn't do anything for your privacy. So, as Mr. Zollinger indicated, you can either withdraw and come up with another solution that might be a minimum request, or continue with the risk.
With the shrubs.
No, I'm not suggesting anything.
Yeah, I mean, my big concern is what the precedent that we're setting. I mean, I'm a little worried about that. I agree with Mr. Mahalson is saying there might be another way to do this, but
It just doesn't make sense when we look right out the door and they have a 6-foot privacy fence. When we go down the road, they have a 6-foot privacy fence.
Yeah.
And yet we're not able to enjoy our yard that we pay taxes on and try to improve upon.
well, I understand that, and that again, if this board had approved that as a variance, if we had record of that, and we don't, right now we have evidence of that, then that would be, I think I would take that into consideration. But that fence may have been put up, this ordinance was put in place in 2003. If that fence was put up more than 15 years ago, it might have been under a different code. So that's one of the, but I just worry, I don't just worry about your neighbors now, I worry about people that live in it. We have to think about people that's gonna live in that neighborhood in the future, and people that don't even live in the city yet. And so those are concerns I have. I haven't made my decision yet, I'm voicing.
If you were to buy a house, or look at a house to purchase, I think it's more appealing to a homeowner knowing that you still live on a busy area, but yet you still have your own privacy and quietness and stuff.
Yeah, and that might be something the city council should look at with corner lots. For right now, the way the city council has written this, they don't think so, or they haven't really considered that. But that might be a consideration for city council to take up.
And like you said, the people that don't even live there yet, if they buy on Pershing, the front of their house will be on Pershing. They'll put their fence in the backyard,
Right.
like what we would like to do. That's our backyard.
You share the same disadvantage that everyone in North Canton does that lives on a corner lot. That you've got front yard setback requirements that also apply to your side yard. I live on a corner, I'm subject to the same issue.
else at this point? All right, thanks. Well, does any, if you're all done, we'll let other
Sure.
people speak if they want to. Anybody else want to? Yes, sir.
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. If I understand this right, this is right on the corner of Pershing and East Maple. Yeah, there were 2 houses put in there in the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years. I don't even know if they met code because they crammed these houses in these little bitty lots. That's why I've been lobbying for years, get rid of R50. It creates more problems. And as I have said a zillion times, I come down my staircase at home, I can look out my window and look right into the bedroom of the house next door. Anyway, natural landscaping works great. We don't limit, to my knowledge, any the height of landscaping, just so it doesn't obstruct the sidewalk that's nearby there if you're building this along the sidewalk. I don't think there's a sidewalk on that side though, because I live around the corner. And yes, you have tons of traffic. The city has failed to do anything about all the traffic that cuts through on Pershing to either get around these lights that they put on East Maple to get to the Y, get to the Hoover District. They need to do something about that. But what I mainly wanted to say is, here we are again, and I've been preaching this for years up here now. We're all sitting here in the audience. Fabulous pictures from what I can tell from back here. Why aren't we digitizing this? And I'm speaking to the clerk here as well. Why aren't we digitizing this in a file for each of these applicants so they can be displayed right there on that big old flat screen TV? None of us can see these fabulous pictures. And I'm not talking about you guys. It's the city officials here that need to be seeing that this is done. We're sitting here. We'd love to see these lovely pictures. And as we all know, a picture says 1,000 words. But we know nothing of what all this has been said here. And the only reason I know a little bit is I live around the corner and I'm very familiar with that whole area. So again, and I spoke to Mr. Van Grundy, get your personnel to digitize these so you can bring them up and we all can sit out here and know what's going on and what's being discussed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Chairman, if I may respond. As a result of the last Planning Commission meeting, the Director of Administration did give direction to revise the forms to include a digital submittal so we can start doing that.
That is fantastic.
It's being worked on.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, very good. Anyone else? I appreciate what wants to be done here. Like I said, I'm concerned about the precedential effect of granting this variance as submitted. And if I had evidence that other 6-foot fences, those fences were put in through a variance or some oversight on the part of the city, or that this construction of this house was done with I didn't really look at the situation of the house and how unique it is to every other house on the lot, and maybe it is unique. If I had something about that, I might reconsider, or I might also reconsider something where that maybe that is less of a violation, a lower fence, shrubbery, whatever. But I'm concerned right now about, as I've talked about before, the size of the fence. Other than the 2 properties where we're seeing pictures, the vast majority of the properties in the neighborhood don't have fences in the front or side yard. And I'm worried that if we grant this as submitted, we're gonna get at, the next application, we're gonna have that look down Pershing, and City Council, at this point, City Council does not want the properties in that neighborhood to have that. If they change that, that's their prerogative. So that's what I'm concerned about at this point. Anybody else?
If they have a different plan, and will they go back to Mr. Van Gundy's office and then ideas can be discussed there rather than having to go through this appeal process?
Absolutely. We're available as a resource to answer any questions and navigate through the codified ordinance.
Like I mentioned before now, you can't, we don't have to rehear this in 6 months. We can elect to rehear it in 6 months as a board, but, we could make you wait 6 months if we wanted to, if we voted and deny this. Or you could dismiss it and try to work with the city more on a different plan that you may end up having to come back here, but we may be more inclined to grant it. Again, I can't predict anything. I'm just trying to give you some advice on what to do. But it's up to you. Before you say anything, though, you guys have anything, other thoughts or questions?
Well, I would agree with that. I think 6 feet is going to be a tough one, but I do think if you dismiss it and have some work done, that would be a wise move.
What do you mean by have some work done? I'm sorry.
Take some time to look at the plans and maybe potentially get closer to what would be acceptable to the group here.
If you withdraw the request, you could come back with a lesser.
You can come back in the next month if you wanted to, if you get it done that quick.
The variance request. So if you came back with a shorter fence with whatever landscaping.
So another $75 application fee to do another fence permit.
Your fee, understand, is by law, we have to advertise in the repository, and the bulk of the fee is to simply cover the city's cost because it's then borne on the taxpayers.
Right, but we paid $75 fence permit, $75 variance fee, so that's $150. So now we have to do another $75.
It's your choice, yes.
Or you could have us vote now if you'd like.
I'm pretty sure how it's gonna
So
go
if
now.
so basically, if we're told, if you guys vote no for a 6-foot fence, we can go back and say, okay, well, we're gonna come back with a 5-foot fence. And you're gonna look at the thing and say, well, the city only wants it to be 3 foot.
Yeah, I can't predict what the board would do if you're requesting another variance, if you're going above 3 feet. But one of the factors we look at is what is the minimum that you can do? What is less of a violation? If I'm making, what is the language?
So can we vote to go 5 foot instead of no?
It's not, if you will, bartering. Your application is for 6 feet. You ask the board to decide on 6 feet.
Yeah, the minimum variance that will allow reasonable use of the property or building. So what's the minimum you can do to get the privacy? And so I think so you could dismiss and then work with the city to try to do something that is like the minimum variance that allow you to achieve what you want to achieve. Or you can have us vote now.
So are you saying if they worked with the city and came up with a different plan, they might not even have to ask for it?
Perhaps, it depends. I mean, the fence would have to be 3 feet. Otherwise, you're going to be coming back here for a variance request, probably.
So to work with the city, we'd still have to be at 3 feet.
3 feet, maybe with something else.
So why would we work with the city if we already have a 3-foot fence there?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have anything else to say.
Would you want us to vote on this, or?
What if we replace the existing fence there? Do we need a permit
Yes,
to replace an existing fence? You need a
Yes.
permit.
because the city would have to, they'd send an inspector out to make sure that your fence was installed correctly and in accordance with city code.
Does your current 3-foot fence, it allows the dog to escape through the pickets, or?
Yeah, he
So
pushes the pickets out.
You're requesting a board-on-board fence then?
Well, the vinyl fence is what we were doing.
Yeah, board on board.
It's tight.
Yes.
So that would, or can the dog actually jump over a 3-foot fence?
A German Shorthair Pointer.
But he's able to jump over a 3-foot fence? Okay.
if you want us to, we'll vote on this.
Others?
Oh, yeah. You want us to vote on it?
I guess we're gonna dismiss it.
Okay. Yeah, talk to Mr. Van Gundy and see what you can do. And then this way, if you need another variance, that a different kind of one or whatever, you can come back as soon as you're ready. Okay?
How do we get a hold of?
I have a Kearney.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go to the next item of business.
They withdrew it.
No, they withdrew. We don't need to vote on that. So we can,
Application number ZBOA 2018-28, Miller's Rental and Sales Contractor and Marita France, homeowner of 973 Whistler Avenue Northwest, North Canton, Ohio. They are requesting variances pursuant to City of North Canton Ordinance Sections 1133.08A1, Item B, 1133.05G1, 1159B, 1159.07A1, 1133.03, and 1133.04. These variances are necessary to install a deck with an accessible lift in front of the home.
all right. Whoever is here to speak on in favor of the application can approach.
I'm Carla Yoder,
Okay.
4787 Gateway Drive, Medina. 4787 Gateway Drive, Medina, 44256.
I'm Bridget Mullins, 2665 Delhi Drive, Clinton, Ohio, 44216.
Okay.
And we're here on behalf of Marita France, 973 Whistler Avenue, Northwest Canton. We're here this is an appeal to the denial for Marita France's handicap accessible egress for her home. Per ordinance 1133.08A, item B, Mrs. France's home is a duplex that was currently not conforming to the 50-foot setback line. It's a duplex in a single-family home zoning area. We're proposing to have a L-shaped deck, which should be called an ADA-compliant turning platform with accessible steps, which will be landing on the existing concrete walkway directly in front of her house. And a pathway that will run along the front of her house is the extended deck that will lead to a vertical platform lift that will allow her to get to her driveway, so she will not have to do steps. She's not able to do steps at this time. She's extreme fall risk. The deck portion will give Ms. France the turn radius she needs to take the wheelchair, which she's getting more reliant upon, from the door to the pathway, and that she's not able to make. This will be an ADA compliant turn. If Mrs. France decides to move or is put in a nursing facility, the entire structure can be removed and the house will look like it does now. We are not removing her current porch and stairs. We are going over them. Regarding section 1159B and 1159A1 of the codified ordinance, unfortunately, we looked really hard. A modular ramp will not fit in her yard due to the extreme sloping. The current configuration of her duplex, this is the only way we can get Mrs. France out of her house with the wheelchair. Again, if Mrs. France decides to move or is put in a nursing facility, the entire structure can be removed and the house will look like it does now. We're not removing anything, we're just simply going over it. Per our conversations with the zoning committee, section 1133.04, which requires a minimum lot area of 11,200 square feet, is short of requirements. Hers is only 6,589 square feet. Our design of this pathway to the lift is being built right up against the house, taking up less space and the deck will only be extending 4 feet past the existing porch towards the street. It's gonna look a lot prettier than an aluminum modular deck going up there. That would take up a whole lot of her.
You say going to, but when I drove by it today, it looked like it was already there.
It's going to. We had to start, she has funding. She is not able to work. She's an elderly person. She relies on funding for this, and our company has to have the project complete by the 30th, or she loses her funding for this, and she cannot get out of her house without it. So we went ahead and started the project, and I believe we finished it yesterday, and we are asking for this variance so that she.
Okay, so what's there is what you're seeking.
Yes, yeah. So it is actually, it's going right over her existing concrete walkway. It hasn't gone past that. And it's a walkway across the front of her house to go to the vertical platform lift. And then it's accessibility for people who can walk up and down steps to use the stairway with the turning radius. Her tenant that lives to the side of her helps her an awful lot because in her house she has stairs that go to the basement. She can't do her laundry on her own. So he comes over an awful lot and helps her do her laundry and get things up and down the basement. So she asks for a stairway to be built on that side so he doesn't have to go all the way around to come up and down. So we have stairs on both sides for that reason. So we use the minimum necessary to make this possible for her. There's unusual circumstances. The fact that she cannot do steps, she cannot walk a lot. That ramp would have been adding, a modular ramp would have been adding a lot of walking for her. She wouldn't have been able to maintain her yard because it would have taken up probably 80 to 90% of her yard. This is taking up her flower bed. It just basically took out her flower bed is all. So thank you for your consideration.
If I may, just before you begin, so you have this consideration when you start your deliberations, is one important overlying criteria that's unique in this application is that both federal and state laws regarding, as you normally hear, the American with Disabilities Act that does apply to municipal zoning and requires that reasonable accommodations be made in the area zoning. So just have that, if you will, as one of the additional criteria.
Yeah, in the American Disabilities Act, it basically takes precedent over municipal law. It's superior to the municipal code, correct? Mm-hmm. So it controls. So where if our code is in conflict with the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Americans with Disability Act controls. And whatever's in conflict in our code is, we can't, it's not to be, it just isn't in force and effect.
There are also two other criteria as far as looking at additional variances and you know, I submit to the board that two of those are in place now, whether or not this structure is placed there or not. They're going to be there any. One is the lot size, and the other is that it's a duplex in an area that appears that doesn't permit that. And regardless of whether or not you have these lift, those two criteria are going to be there anyway.
Okay. Are one of you the owner of the property?
She wasn't able to come.
Okay.
She has a really hard time getting out of her house.
Wait, she owns it, doesn't she?
She's the owner.
Okay, that's right. I looked that up. Is the deck going to be stained or anything? Right now it looks.
That's up to the homeowner, and it has to stand for a while before we get it to the point of.
I don't know if it, I'm not saying this is a reason to deny this. I'm just saying aesthetically it might help with the appearance. I don't know if any neighbors have issues with it. I certainly understand her situation and understand the necessity of all this. I'm just wondering if there are any plans to improve the curb appeal of that structure, because it looks like it needs a little help, a little work. You don't know if there's anything that's being done in that regard?
Well, this is all funded, so by waiver, the state waiver.
Yeah.
So they won't pay for
Right.
the staining.
They're just gonna pay for it.
Or anything like that. So they're just pay for that. So that would be on Ms. France to
Okay.
do something like that. So we can tell her when we leave that there is a recommendation that
Yeah.
she does hire someone to get this stained, and she could certainly hire us to do that as well, but
Okay.
that would be entirely up to her.
And
Does somebody, do you guys want to see the picture of what it looks like now?
I've already seen it.
Did they see it? You guys want to see it? We just have,
We have that one. That one doesn't have the handrails finished on it.
one other,
The handrails are finished on this one.
yeah, this was in process.
Yeah, thanks.
if you leave those with the clerk so she could have those, or if anyone from the public wished to see that. One other criteria for the board, it's not uncommon for the law department or the building department to hear applicants state things such as there's funding and there's a brief window to be able to do this, and there's a sense of urgency as a result of that. And what I had suggested that would aid the credibility of the statements, not that we don't believe them, but it aids in the credibility to show the board, or for us to state that indeed we have seen those. We asked for some supporting documentation because this was a bit of a last minute application, and the rationale behind it was the funding, and they did provide the building department with the necessary documentation to show a sense of urgency. So we didn't want to have that held against them. There are times where someone will come in, they will do this work and then come and ask for the authority of the variance to do it, and that sometimes doesn't work in their favor. But here they absolutely did appear and demonstrate the authenticity of theirs. I believe a $10,000 grant that was going to be available, but it would term at the end of this year if they didn't have it completed.
That was a question I had, so that answers that.
Yeah, and along those lines, when I started the conversations with the contractor, as I understand, the deck was not started at that point. So this was before any work had taken place of
Okay.
construction.
Oh, yeah.
All right, that's good to know. Anybody else, any questions?
As an architect, I fully support and am very familiar with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak with regard to this application?
I would like to speak against this.
Go ahead and give your name and address.
I'm Barbara Herman, and I live at 970 Werschler, North Canton. First of all, I think they paint, after hearing their story, I think they painted her, I know she has problems, but I think they painted them a little darker than what they are right at the moment. She certainly enjoyed standing at her front storm door to watch the work going on while this was happening. So first of all, I don't like being put in this position against a good neighbor because the city rules aren't followed and you let construction start before zoning is settled and a permit is issued. Now, I didn't get this letter until yesterday, and yesterday was the day that was finished. I was told that this was going to be a ramp, Well, that isn't quite right. And this letter said that there will be a meeting Tuesday, December 20th at 6 p.m. So I think, well, did I miss the meeting? Or is it Thursday? Well, I found out it was Thursday. And then I get this letter telling me that there are many zoning problems. We went all through them. That part of that said, let's go down to see, but we'll go on. Why let them build this before it is zoned and permitted? I just don't understand it. And it is not very attractive. What will that do to the value of my home? The person who lives next to me could care less. She's a renter. The two houses on the corner of Woodrow have shrubbery and/or fencing. They're not going to look at it. I'm right across the street. I see it every time I look out my front window, every time I go in and out of my drive. And it isn't pretty. If the white cement block duplex ever gets the brown siding that matches the garages had brown siding put on it years ago. She has the siding laying in the driveway of the other duplex and in his garage. It's going to be a brown house with a white lift on the side. I don't think there's any way that anything can be planted there because it's practically sitting on the blacktop driveway. Are there any other lifts like this that are so ugly looking, visible from the street in town? Now, by having this meeting, does it mean you're willing to disregard the zoning ordinances if no one says anything about the unsightly lift? Believe me, I understand health problems. My husband was brain damaged and handicapped for 10 years before he passed away, 17 years ago. So I know health problems. Will I enjoy looking at this lift every time I look out the window or go outside? No. What will it do to the sale value of my home? I talked to a realtor this morning and was told that it would, quote, be a definite deterrent to selling my house. The outside of the duplex needed upgrading, not downgrading. My feelings certainly were not considered in this matter. I'm sorry I was put in this position, that I had to come to this meeting and read this. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I have some follow-up questions in response to what she said. Them, thank you. So what, I understand the sloping made the ramp, it was hard to do a ramp or something else like that because of the sloping of the yard. Did the back, what about an entrance in the back? Did you guys look at that?
Yes,
or
absolutely.
What was the problem with not going through the back?
The doors are not wide enough for her, and then also when you come in, she has steps and then another door to turn in, which she cannot handle. So it'd be, for her funding purposes, it was not an option. We honestly looked at that also.
How is it she qualified for the funding?
That's,
Okay, what happens with the funding, the state funding, is a doctor is involved.
Okay.
Physical therapist, occupational therapy, and financial. So all of that together, there's different organizations with the state funding, and this is a waiver, and waiver will allow a certain amount of money. She did pay a small amount that she pays per month for her services that she gets through funding. But this is a waiver, state-funded, and they just don't give it to everybody, and they go through a lot. And people wait 20 years to get a waiver.
Yeah.
And if they feel that she is physically disabled, where she needs to have something to get out of her house, seriously, as things progress with her, or if she's having a bad day, maybe someday she could stand at the window and watch. But on bad days, if there is a fire, she will not be able to get out of her home. So they look at that as well. So, and there isn't any reason why we can't help her get out of
Why,
her house.
what about the time window? Why, like, I understand, I mean, I totally empathize with what she's saying. And first of all, it is very unattractive. I don't mind saying that. It's in the front of the house. If that was built across the street from me, I'd feel the same way as her. And like, and the fact that it was built before, without really notification. So can you speak to why? I understand there was a time, there was the deadline, there where the funding would go away, but where is it? Why wasn't the process started early enough so that everybody could be notified before it was built?
We actually started on this process back in June, actually.
It's a process. She has to have several quotes before, at least 3 quotes, in order to do this project. 2 people went out and they requested the possibility of a ramp first, and then any other suggestions. So 3 people, 3 different manufacturing companies or contractors have been out there, and they're like, 2 said, you know, I can't even see where you could get anything done here with a ramp, because you can't. It's just impossible. So the 3rd person said, she told them, after we had been out, told them our design, and they go, this would work, but we don't want to work with the city, so we're gonna let them do it. So that was what took time. We put our bid in, but she had to have other bids, because that's the rule. They have to have at least 3 quotes in order to do this. So
we didn't get awarded the job until maybe the last week of October, first week in November, and then we turned it over to our guys to do the configuration, like what materials do we need. Then we found out, then we asked them to start working with the city, and then I ended up working with Marty, and then here we are, so.
And it's a lot of work. I mean, you guys put us through a lot too, you know, to do all this.
Yeah.
And the time crunch, we have a lot of clients, and we work diligently, I feel, with the city, and Bridget was amazing. And so her funding ends in December. December 30th, and she needs a walk-in bathtub, or walk-in shower, I'm sorry, remodel of her bathroom, because she's having a lot of difficulty. So next year she will get new funding, and then she can do something for the inside of her home, and hopefully get a stair lift or something to get down to the basement, because she cannot do her own laundry. So she has a lot of issues, and so they're just trying every year to help her. So she would have lost a whole chunk of money had it not be done at the end of the month.
Okay.
It's a tough yard.
Anybody else have any questions?
ADA does require 32 inches clear, which is probably why you were forced to do that at the front door.
Not go around the back. Yep. All right. Thank you very much.
I think, wait, one thing to clarify, the city did not issue a permit for this work to occur.
Correct. That's correct.
So I think there was a statement made that the city allowed this to happen, and the city, in fact, did not allow this to happen, but Miller's.
We accelerated the process. It was the last minute, I believe, the board had issued that there were going to be 2 applicants, and this kind of came at the last minute, and thankfully we were able to, through Mr. Van Gundy, the building department, and the clerk for that, is recontact the repository. They work with us as well to be able to put this kind of accelerated process so we could get it before this board, so that it could review it in time for her to meet the funding requirement.
Miller's installed this at their risk at this time.
That's right. And to clarify, we were working back and forth to find a design that would not require a variance or an appeal to that. And unfortunately, it was just after the cutoff date that I made that final determination that it does require an application to the board. And the rest is as Mr. Fox had mentioned.
Anything else? Anybody else wish to speak? If not,
Well, I don't know how much time the planning took, but the construction took 2 days.
yeah, it sounds like it was quick.
It took more than 2 days, because we were there first week of the whole, then we worked on concrete
Okay.
last week.
All right, well, I don't want to too much back and forth, I understand. So, you know, I gotta tell you, it's really not attractive. I mean, if you could talk to her, something's gotta be done to make that more pleasing. I really feel for anybody that lives in a neighborhood.
I'm right across the street.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, it's really not attractive, and it's not something we really have power. We can't make her go and do this. That's not what we're here for. I'm just telling you, as a citizen of the city, if that was built across the street from me, I'd be, without me knowing about it, I'd be upset about it. Now, that being said, I think this meets all the requirements for a variance because, first of all, the ADA is in play, and that controls over a lot of our ordinances, and we're doing the absolute minimum necessary to comply. The property is unique with the slope, the shape of it, the fact that it can't be put anywhere else. Something a lot larger and more intrusive could have been put up. It would be more attractive if perhaps the decking was painted and the front of the house is painted all in the same color and not, some lighter color, but that's just my opinion. We can't make you do that, but I understand the timing. I usually don't like it when things have already been built, and then the variances people come in for a request for a variance after something's already been constructed. I don't like that either, but I understand the timing and the funding issue here. I understand the comments about, well, should I see her walking around? To get funding like this, you've got to prove a certain level of disability. You've got to have medical professionals sign off on it to get this kind of funding. And that's not something, we're not here to assess the health of the person. That's for other people to do, and that has apparently been done here. So I feel like we are left with no choice but in my opinion, to grant the variance based on the ADA and what's been done. But I have to tell you, I feel for the people that live around this property because it's not attractive, and I certainly hope something is done to make it look at least a little bit better, because I'd feel the same way as ma'am, I'm sorry, I don't remember your last name. Yeah, I totally empathize with what she has said.
I agree with all those comments.
ADA dictates the configuration of that construction, the height of the guard, the configuration, the size of the landing, and so forth. So there's nothing that can be done there. And in lack of an architectural review board, we're powerless for any sort of aesthetics applied to this.
Anybody else? Okay, if there's nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
Second.
Okay, go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Mr. Mahalson?
Yes.
Ms. Clevenger?
Yes.
Mr. Zollinger?
Yes. Okay, that variance has been granted. If there's no other business to come before the board, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
And all those in favor just say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Happy holidays.